Well, here's a pretty rare opportunity. Here we are out at Pahrump, or what they call Spring Mountain Raceway. And I got to tell you, we have an opportunity now to drive something you don't normally get to drive, and that's the actual development mule for the 2015 Shelby GT. And there are big changes here, Gary. Tell me what makes a difference between a 14 to a 15 now.
So when you compare it to the 14 had the big 5.8 liter engine, big supercharger, lots of horsepower. So what we did with the 5 liters, we put a big supercharger on it. We got lots of horsepower. We're at 750 plus horsepower to this new car on the new chassis, and we've got the new independent suspension.
Well, let's talk about that, because I was a little bit skeptical. You and I had dialogues before you guys even got these cars that, I was a little nervous about IRS, because it can be, if it's not right, tricky to drive and even harder to recover when you get in trouble. I'm stunned at what you guys have done.
Rick, you're absolutely right. The new IRS really has done a great job of helping us to plant the tires. So, everybody sees, well, okay, you got independent rear suspension. Like you say, that can be good, it can be bad. In fact, Carroll Shelby himself tested independent rear suspension in the mid-60s on a 65 Shelby Mustang.
Good point.
And what they found back then was really on a smooth surface, that particular technology at the time was no faster. So then rather than add to some complexity and so forth, they chose not to do it. Well, let's fast forward 50 years.
Good point.
So 50 years later, maybe we've learned a couple things.
Well, if I could make the comparison, the 14 car was just more brutal, Gary. It was about, you went in there and you manhandled it. This car is just so surgical, so balanced now.
Yeah, it really is. You can go out with this thing and finesse it into the corners. Now, with this new chassis, you really finesse it. And where the IRS really works today is especially not only on a flat road surface where the stick axle really puts a lot of load on the outside of the tire in the back, it really distributes the weight much more evenly now, and you can actually not only feel it when you drive, and as a driver, Rick, you would absolutely feel that, but you can actually see it. So if we look at the tires off of the old stick axle car,
yep,
when it comes off the track, you see a lot of wear on the outside edge of that tire. Whereas when you look at this new one, and even after it's been driven hard for day after day at the track, it's got a nice even wear pattern all the way across. So not only do you get better tire wear, but you obviously are getting a lot better grip on the road if you're using all the tire and not just the outside edge.
I guess I grew up on these live axle cars for so long, Gary. I was just afraid of the change. But if I'd have known it was going to be anything like this balanced and readable, which I did not expect it to be so readable.
Yeah, Rick, you're absolutely right. It really is predictable. And that's where it's just a beautiful car, is the fact that, it gives you plenty of input.
You're right.
There's really no surprise. As the back end starts to drift and so forth, you can adjust your driving, add some throttle to it, get the weight planted on the back tires so that in fact, it really reacts well and plants those back tires and really scoots out of the corner.
And I got to tell you something else, Gary. I've tested a lot of cars. You say to me 750 horsepower. I've driven a lot of cars that were no longer linear as a result. I love how clean and linear this thing is at 750.
Well, Rick, being a linear throttle and a linear response is so critical because that makes the car very drivable. If you can't predict when that power comes in, if you can't modulate the power
exactly
and know exactly what's going to happen, like you do with a large naturally aspirated engine, then you can't really use that power.
Totally correct.
Okay? This power, because it's linear, on a road course, it just acts like it's got a big engine in it. It's just bad, except for, oh, by the way, it's not big and it's not heavy, and so that helps the car stay really well balanced. But that linear throttle response is just phenomenal.
And I think that's one of the sensations that I'm enjoying, is that the car does not feel heavy.
Right. And it's really, really a great car. And the other thing is, what I like about them is they're really, really easy to live with. My wife and I actually took a Shelby GT. We drove it from our house north of Las Vegas, 350, 400 miles to Willow Springs Racetrack. We took that same car, we drove it very, very hard for several days at the racetrack, and then we drove the same car home.
Wild.
So we put 1,000 miles on that car in, you know, virtually a 3-day period of time, and, you know, it was a transition between a kick-ass track car to, oh, by the way, you can drive it on the street, the highway, go get milk at the grocery store. It's a car that you can live with every day. The good old days are today.
You know, you're dead right. This new platform of Mustang is not last year's car by a stretch. I mean, so much nicer to drive. It points, it's drivable, it's readable, and like you said, you can live with this suspension package off, you know, in neighborhoods. You know, it doesn't beat you up. I'm just stunned at what this thing is now capable of. You guys have just done an amazing job.
Well, you know, it's really been a great partnership. We've had a lot of good input from Ford Motor Company, and, you know, Vince and I have been driving these things for years, and we know how to push them pretty hard. You know how to push them hard. So we find out things. You know, Carol used to say, take it out and break it. Let's see what's going to go wrong so that we can fix it.
Could you live long enough to break this thing? I don't know.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. We've broke some stuff, Rick, but we've also fixed a lot of stuff as a result of it.
Good point.
And really, at the end, that's what makes our cars continually be better, is through those development things, through breaking some things, and then you fix them. So,
good job, my friend.
All right.
Congratulations.
Hey,
stunning piece.
Rick,
Stunning job.
outstanding. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to pick on Vince for a little bit now.
I hope so.
Yeah.